The views and opinions expressed during Love and Life with Lana and Dave are those only of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the position of our podcast hosts or affiliates. Any content provided is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. All right, let's do it.
You're listening to Love and Life with Lana and Dave, the podcast where logic is power and you take control. Thank you for tuning in and making the choice to listen in and get ideas for your own love and life. Now, here are your hosts, Lana Williams and David Vaccaro.
Well, hello. It is the end of March, so happy end of March, fourth week of March, and April's coming up soon. This should air at the last week of March for you. This podcast is called Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Dave is taking a little bit of a break right now from us. He is dealing with some personal stuff and needs a little bit of time, and that's fine. I'm holding down the fort, and the last 2 weeks I just need to apologize. We haven't had a podcast, and that's been my crazy, hectic life. I haven't had time to really make a podcast, but I also didn't want to make a podcast for the sake of it and sort of like just drop a bunch of nonsense on you either. I want to make sure that I have some decent content when I do podcast. So this week, the podcast is going to be, are you ready? It's called The Logic of Removing Personal Sensitivity from Your Interactions. Now, the reason that I came up with this topic is because I've been having conversations over the past week or so with people who are dealing with some issues in their life, and the concept of how personal we take things that happen to us has come up. So basically, when it comes to how we're taking things in life, how personal should we take things going on around us from other people or from the universe? Are people trying to hurt us? Are people trying to bring us down? Is the universe trying to bring us down? That sort of thing. And so I thought this was a good topic to kind of review that a little bit. What I'll do is starting off with like how much people really do pay attention to you, in general in life. How much attention are people paying to you as you go through your life and in your travel? Is there a gauge for that? Can we understand in some way how much the general public is paying attention? And then as a subset of that, like, why do we feel that it's important that we get attention from others? Especially positive. I think most people are looking for positive attention. Of course, there are people who will take any kind of attention, and negative is fine too, but really they seek out positive attention. So we have to look at who are we and why do we seek that out from our fellow human beings. So we're going to discuss a little bit of mob mentality, and we're also going to talk about rank mentality. These aren't scientific terms, by the way, that I'm throwing at you. These are just terms. These are things that I call these things. Of course, they may be called something completely different if you Google them. We're going to discuss ad hominem. Now, that is an actual term, and basically, that's people insulting you, people taking the focus off the topic of discussion and then focusing it on you and throwing insults at you. And then the concept of anonymity right now because of the internet and people that are just basically looking to come along and troll other people online. Also, gaslighting, passive aggressive language, people that give you backhanded compliments, or they're trying to make you feel bad in some way. And the instinct of human beings, instead of trying to level up as who they are, trying to kind of knock you down to their level. Also, I want to discuss a little bit about ignoring the what that is going on in the conversation and trying to look behind that and seeing the why people are doing things they're doing or saying things they're saying, and how not to really react so much to it. And then, wrapping it up, how people don't generally intend to hurt others. It's sort of not something that they preconceived do or they premeditatedly do. They sort of they may hurt you in the process of trying to do something for themselves. And so just to understand the motivation behind what most people are doing. Also, rejection with dating, rejection, how you feel about rejection with dating and taking that sort of thing personal, the process of dating, how you feel about others, how they feel about you. And is it really an attack on you if somebody's not interested? All of this falls together under the umbrella of how we see ourselves and how we think other people see us, The first thing I wanted to bring up was, how much attention are people giving us? If we're out in public doing our thing, like how much attention are we really getting from people around us, right? Are people in the perimeter of our existence paying a lot of attention to us? I think we can be self-conscious. I think there's some form of maybe self-negativity or self-talk that goes on with us, and we do tend to project it. I honestly believe that most people at the end of the day aren't really paying that much attention to us as we go through our travels, or that we're not really that memorable. And this is what I mean. Let's say you walk into a bar or some kind of restaurant or something. I can bring up an example where I have friends that if I want to go out with them and meet them somewhere, my friends these days don't care as much, but there was a time where I had friends that would want to get together, meet out somewhere, and get in our cars and, head to a place to grab food or grab drinks or whatever. And I would get the question, can you meet me outside? Now, I'm probably one of the least sensitive people to going into places by myself. I started really young in the DJ business, and so I always went out by myself sort of to talk to managers, bar owners, club owners to get gigs. So it really is like breathing to me to just get in my car and go anywhere at any time and not think anything of it. And if there's something I want to see, there's a band I want to see, there's something I want to eat somewhere, I want to see a movie, anything like that, I really just will get in my car and go. Maybe there's a DJ playing somewhere that I know or I've heard of is really good and I just want to go, right? I'll just go. I'll make the plan to do it and go. I will let people know I'm going to be there, that I'm doing that thing, but I basically don't wait for other people, to go somewhere. And I'm at a point now where I kind of enjoy the freedom of that. Not that I don't love my friends and getting together with them, but it doesn't keep me from going anywhere to not have someone to go with. I think I'm really far removed from that, I guess. There are people that I know that don't really like going anywhere without someone else. I will say to them, I'll meet you there. I'll grab a table. I'll sit down. I'll order something for you if you want, if it's a place that both of us know and we know the menu and the items that they have there. To me, it's efficiency, right? I don't really want to sit around and wait 20 minutes for you to get there to get the table or wait 20 minutes for you to get there to get the order in. I just assume get that started for us, right? Because we want to spend time together. So the things that are going on around us, we really want to make sure that stuff's ready to go. So that's what I'll do. So I don't have an issue with worrying about someone to go with, and it doesn't really even dawn on me. I just sort of do my own thing. So when somebody says, meet me outside, I do have to stop and ask why. I'm not really prepared for the question, but I'm also curious as to, why they don't want to, just because I genuinely want to know. They'll maybe say they don't like walking in the door and being seen, as people turning their heads when you walk in. So the perception of people turning and looking at you when you walk into a place full of people, for me, is that you are in their peripheral vision. You are a moving item. So if you were sitting in a club or a bar or a restaurant and somebody walks in the door, you might turn and look because somebody is in your peripheral vision and you're seeing a moving thing. Perhaps you're looking for somebody that you're waiting for or somebody that might look like somebody you know, but you're not really judging them for who they are. You don't care what they're wearing. You don't care what they're doing. You're just turning your head briefly because you're seeing motion. What you think about it, what you wonder about, it's really, none of that really happens, So people are very, I would say, self-absorbed or self-directed. And that means that most people are very caught up in their own world and universe and what's going on with them. And they might be quickly, briefly distracted by somebody that's walking in their field of vision, but it doesn't really mean there's any kind of judgment going on. Even if there's several people that turn and look, it's really mostly that they were looking at some sort of something in the horizon and you walked through that vision for them and it distracted them briefly. But most of the time, they go back to what they're doing fairly quick. So I don't think there's more to it than just that it's something moving through their field of vision. Now, when somebody says to me, hey, why do you go to a restaurant by yourself or a movie by yourself? I say, well, listen, what if I was a movie critic or a restaurant critic and this was my job, right? And you were paying me, let's say, to throw a figure out, like $75,000 a year to go out and sit in a restaurant and eat specific things that I heard were good, bad, or indifferent. Because let's say that, I write for the Zagat Guide and I want to make sure that people are aware of how great this restaurant is or how terrible this restaurant is or whatever. I would be going restaurant to restaurant by myself. I would be sitting down, ordering specific items Nobody outside of what I'm doing knows what I'm doing there. I don't really think most people care what you're doing and don't care that you're by yourself. However, if you go to movies by yourself, if you go to restaurants by yourself, what difference does it make to anybody else what you're doing? And if it was like something that you did for a living, it wouldn't bother you. It wouldn't even faze you. You would just say, well, that's not my problem. That's what they want to think about me. That's fine. But this is what I do. I go to restaurants and I judge food, or I critique meals at restaurants because it's my job. Now, if you're like a DJ like myself, or, somebody in stand-up, or somebody that would dance on stage, or who's a performer, there are tons of people looking at you at the same time, and that can be unnerving. However, that is part of your job. You did choose that, so that's a little bit different. You probably have the personality to deal with something like that. Because I don't do any of those things, to be honest with you, it's not something where people focus on me to this extent. Even as a DJ, I don't get this much focus. It's just that briefly I'm talking, or I'm moving, or doing something that's drawing people's attention, and it's quick, it's fleeting, and people go back to what they're doing, which in my case is fine by me. Now, if you put yourself in someone else's position, which is something I'm pretty good at, and you're sitting at a bar, or you're sitting at a restaurant, you're waiting for somebody, let's say, at a restaurant somewhere, and let's say you've been out with some friends, or maybe you've gone out with some people to a restaurant together, there's 5 or 6 of you, and somebody walks in the door, you are going to change focus briefly based on somebody walking in a door and past you. And it is very strange to me that you would think that these people would judge you based on, they don't really have enough information to go on, but that you would care that people you may never see again would judge you in some way, even really briefly. Now, let's say you do karaoke. You're the type of person that likes to go out on a karaoke night, sing a little bit. You have fun doing that. It's something that most people won't do. And in a way, it kind of puts you ahead of everybody that's listening to you. Not that you're ranking yourself above anybody else. You can visualize people saying, well, I wish I'd get up there and sing like this person does. But those people are not looking at you in a negative light. I think as human beings, we have a negative perception of ourselves, or sometimes we have some really negative self-talk that we sort of project onto people around us. And I don't personally believe that they're looking at us in that way. I believe that that's something that we project, or we assign to the people around us. And then moving on to a subset of the last topic about attention. Why do we feel like we need attention? And this isn't something that I studied enough to know. I don't personally have a default for this. I know most humans want to be accepted for the society, or by the society around them. They want to feel like they fit in. And so if you're at a bar somewhere, or a club somewhere, or a restaurant, or anywhere that you normally go with your crowd, there's a bunch of people in that environment that you probably look up to, or you respect in some way. And so you generally want to be accepted by that crowd, right? So I get that. Beyond your friendships, of course. But generally, anybody that's around the areas or regions or places that you frequent, school, work, community, anything that you do in a common way, there are people around those areas that you, of course, would like to converge with, or relate to, or be accepted by. Now, listen, you couldn't possibly be accepted by every single person. You don't really have much control over that. You don't really have to work for that. Or you may have mutual friends, people around you, or coworkers, or, everybody that has their own individual life going on. And unless they're extremely gossipy, judgmental, or they like drama, they're not really going to judge you based on your life. Most people do worry more about what their own life entails. If you're at a dinner party or somewhere where there's people around you, and let's say there's somebody that you perceive has more than you, whether it's who they're involved with, or their house, or their money, or their life, or their job, we can project insecurity on that person, or that somebody specific that we think has a better life or a better position in life than we do. And then I think we can rank ourselves beneath people like this, and it does maybe affect the dynamic of how we interact with them. So I don't think in an environment that you're standing in that people around you are judging you as harshly or as in the moment presently as you may think they are. Is it possible to get to a point where is it easy? Is there some way to not care so much about what everybody around us thinks? I mean, one, I don't think that they are. And so how do we get to a point where we understand that they're not, and we're happy about that? We want the freedom of people not paying attention to us, and us sort of being able to go under the radar, if that makes any sense. So here's a story. When I was in high school, I would say my sophomore year, of course, I wanted everybody around me to like me. So I tried to make sure that I was agreeable and that I was accommodating and that I was impressive to people around me in my sophomore year. But what I noticed was that even though I was directly friendly with people, there were maybe have been two people that didn't like each other. Inevitably, I had to eventually choose, or there would be a point in time where I would become an enemy indirectly just because two other people weren't getting along, and I was trying to be friendly with those two people. So I, at some point, realized that I was going to compromise myself somehow. Somebody may say to you, listen, I understand you want to be friends with me and this other person, but since we're not getting along, I implore you to choose between us. At some point, you can't win by trying to please everybody. It doesn't go well no matter what you do, but like you can't make all of that work. At some point, you're going to realize that you cannot please every single person in your environment, right? And make everybody like you. At some point, you will make an enemy, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. It will be no fault of your own, right? Because you're friendly with somebody that maybe not friendly with another person. So in my senior year, I decided, you know what? I like myself. I like my life. I'm happy. I'm going to enjoy my senior year. I'm not going to be here next year. Fuck it. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do what I enjoy. I'm going to be around with people that I like, that have been friendly to me, and that haven't given me any issues or hassle, or people that I don't have to bend over backwards to impress, which, by the way, what I put on myself. If you demonstrate the ability or willingness to bend over backwards for certain people, some people will take you up on that offer, and they will try to see how far back you'll bend because you're offering it. I don't think anybody in your life is asking for you to do that. I think sometimes you usually volunteer, and they sort of don't stop you. They'll step in and say, well, okay, well, if you want to do it, I'll let you do it. Let's see how far I can get you to go. Now, you may be trying to bend over backwards to be looked at as cool or respected, or you want a reputation to be looking positive. But anyway, in my senior year, I said, fuck it. I don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm going to have a good time. I have friends I have fun with. I'm going to get together with as many people as I can. I'm trying to experience as many events as I can because, this is it. So high school dances, events, things where a bunch of kids were getting together, house parties, anything like that. I tried to be present. I tried to get to all of these things and experience them, right? Not because I cared about who was throwing the parties or who saw me, but mostly I wanted to have the memories and the experience. I mean, why not, right? Why not try to get to everything if I can, right? Because you can't do it again. That's over at the end of the year. But what I noticed was that the minute that I decided I didn't care what anybody thought and I did whatever I wanted to do, I became a different person to those people. And I became hard to impress because I just lost interest in trying to care. And then there were people that I wouldn't say tried to impress me, but there were people that were a little more interested in wanting to make sure that I was around. So whether I was trying to be part of a clique or whatever previous to my senior year, I decided to give up trying. I just didn't care anymore. So what ended up happening was at the end of the day, I ended up at a lot of events with some of the people that I probably, like I said, I don't think there was any dynamic going on where those people thought they were better than me or that they were better than me, but I perceived it that way. I would say the most popular clique in the school was where I ended up, and it was because I didn't give a shit if I did or I didn't. It's funny, it just gravitated for me to that, and it's weird. I ended up there. What's that phrase? You would hate to be part of a club that would accept you, you know what I mean? Not caring, I would say, or not having taken or leaving everything changes the dynamic a lot. And I found out in life that high school was not the only place that translates, So that's my story. But for the most part, as soon as I stopped trying to get attention from people and trying to like people, things flipped for me. As soon as I genuinely decided I didn't care anymore. All right, so think about this. When you're out and you're about and you're worried about people around you and what they might think, two things I always say is if you can do things by yourself, go out and go by yourself anywhere, or you can talk to anybody anywhere. Those are the two biggest passports in your life. Those will open up a whole new world for you and change a lot of things if you can do them. Of course, nobody's ever born doing things like that. You have to practice a lot. So you learn by doing, right? You go places by yourself till it becomes second nature to you. And you talk to strangers everywhere until it becomes second nature to you. And neither of those things will bother you anymore. They'll just become like no big deal, right? Just remember that. Those are the two major things I think in life that would make sure that your experience in life are a lot more robust. And that is being able to go anywhere and have a good time by yourself, and being able to walk up to anybody anywhere and start a conversation. Why should you sit home and do nothing because somebody else isn't able to or willing to or available to go with you? If you really want to go somewhere and experience something, you get in your car and you go, or you get on your plane and you go, or you get on your train and you go. I personally believe it shouldn't matter. I went out and had lunch by myself today, and I'm sure a few people in the restaurant wondered why I was sitting by myself and eating lunch. I don't care, because I'm hungry, and because I have the money to eat lunch, and because I was in the area, and because I like the restaurant. And that's good enough, but not necessarily something I have to explain to people around me. So the next thing is the mob mentality. That's sort of like if enough people believe that this is societally normal and you fall outside that, then there's something wrong with you, right? There are people that have this mindset. It's somewhat of a human trait, but understanding that you can fall outside of the normal. And yes, it is subjective. Societal norm is subjective, right? It's subjective to a bunch of people who believe one thing. I believe falling outside the norm and not caring about it triggers people, because it starts to make them question whether or not they should be following the program. And when somebody insults you or gives you a hard time, tells you that you're wrong or that something's wrong with you for doing outside the normal, you have to understand why somebody would say that to you. Why would somebody really tell you that you're doing the wrong thing? You don't want to go and cause trouble. You don't want to go and shake things up and draw attention to yourself. If everybody's driving a blue car and you're driving a red car, and people tell you that because you have the red car that you're in, something's wrong with you, you have to think about why somebody would say that to you, What's in it for someone else to tell you that you're doing the wrong thing, and that you need to do things a specific way? Does you not conforming make other people feel bad or weird or wrong for conforming? Is that why they step out from the wall and tell you that you're doing things wrong? Question everything. I would say that if you're ever in a situation where you're supposed to do anything without question and you're supposed to blindly follow some rules, I would say that that's the one time that you should question the most what is happening. And if other people tell you that you shouldn't be questioning it, I would say that there's a very sinister or there is a motive that's against your well-being in action there. There's nobody shit really cares about you or wants you to be happy would ever tell you that it's wrong to question anything around you. Now, if it's who you are to go against the grain, I think you should be who you are. And if people push back against you for not being being who you are to tell you that you should be somebody else, look at the psychological aspect about why somebody would tell you to do that. That's all I'm saying. And 9 times out of 10, by the way, it's their own insecurity. It's the realization on their side that they may need to question society and the conformity as well, but they don't have the strength to do it, or they fear doing it. And because you're not fearing it, you're drawing attention to them that they maybe should also question what's going on. I'll use children as an example. I've never wanted children. And there are people who will say things to you like, when you have something, you should pass it on, or, oh, if you meet the right guy, you'll want children. Don't worry, which I love. I'm not worried about it, but they'll tell me not to worry. That's interesting. That's okay. At some point, you'll meet the right guy, and it'll all change, and you'll want kids. You just haven't met the right guy. And I always say to myself, what does the one have to do with the other? I've never understood the connection between the two. Also, nobody would ever know that about me. Nobody would ever know what my makeup and my wiring is to tell me that if I meet a specific guy that I'm going to suddenly want children, unless at some point I've ever questioned wanting children. Let's say I'm on the fence and meeting a guy who I love who wants children makes me think that it's best to do it because I've not been sure about it. But I've always been pretty sure. And people will override me. I'll tell them, no, that's not going to make any difference. If I meet a nice guy, that's great, but it's not going to change what I want to do as far as kids are concerned or marriage or, anything traditional. They will not listen to me. They won't hear it. They'll just talk over me and say, no. At some point, you'll change your mind about this. Oh, okay. I'm far into my life at this point, and if I was going to change my mind about it, I think by now I would have. And so I know myself probably better than a lot of people. And at 18 or 19 or whatever, even at 12, I knew this wasn't going to be something I was going to do. Now, it's rattled people that I've said that. I think there's a lot of people that really just kind of grow up and have programming and traditional values, and they just follow things and they don't question anything. And I think those people, it unnerves people like that to think that what they're doing and what their parents and grandparents have done might not be the right thing. Like they can't think about that because that's what they're doing, and it would throw them off completely to know that they could have chosen something different. They have to want what they're doing. People have to want what they're doing. Also, it never made sense to me that somebody would actually care what you're doing as long as they're making their life decisions for themselves. For them to step outside of their little circle and tell you outside of their life what you should be doing is just interesting to me, because everybody has the choice to do what they want to do. And if you know yourself well and you know what you want, somebody telling you that you're wrong when you're not affecting anything in their life is just interesting. It doesn't have to do with you. It's a projection onto you about what they think they should do with their life or what they might have done the wrong way, or that they feel like they don't want to ever have to stop and question what they've already made a decision to do. So I've been single for a really long time, and the reason I have been is because I'm very comfortable with being single. And there may be somebody that I'm looking for, but if it's probably a rare occurrence that I would run into that person. I can take or leave relationships because I'm very comfortable with single life. I don't feel like I need to get off the market. If somebody comes along that's really seeking a relationship and they're hunting down somebody and they run into someone like me, it upsets them to hear me say, well, sure, I'd enjoy or I would entertain a relationship if it was the right one, but I'm perfectly fine with never getting involved. I can take or leave it. And if the person I'm a match for doesn't exist or isn't somebody that crosses my path, then I'll just never get involved. These people there are people that are day in and day out looking for their soulmate. They're trying to get someone that they need to nail down. And when they run into somebody that's not in the mindset that they're in, it upsets them. I have been told several times that I need to get out of the dating pool because I'm not serious enough about it. Because it upsets them. It makes them question their strategy. It makes them question the way that they're doing things. Maybe it makes them feel more desperate. Maybe it makes them feel like they're trying too hard. I really don't know. All of that is really going to be a reflection of their insecurity or how they feel about what you're doing. You cannot prevent. I don't think a lot of people really stop and ask themselves what they actually want. I think they go through life sort of with this process that they've learned is the way that they need to do things. Let's say their parents did this, their grandparents did this. There are people in their lives that are just telling them, hey, no, you put your nose down to the grindstone and this is how you find somebody and get your relationship together. So I'm not really against relationships. I just happen to be looking for a specific type. And that specific type, I've learned it's possible that specific type might not exist, or that type of person may be very hard to find or impossible to find for me. And I've made peace with the fact that that's okay. So the concept of the fact that no soulmate may exist for me really rattles other people, because then they start to think, well, there may not be a person who's a match for me. They'll try to push back on me for saying something like that. Like, what do you mean you may not ever meet somebody? What do you mean there may not ever be a soulmate? That type of thing will keep somebody up at night that's on a serious hunt to find somebody to settle down with. Anyway, that is mob mentality. That you need to be doing what they're doing. And what they're doing is they're making it a job to find themselves somebody that's a soulmate. And everyone else needs to be doing the same thing. Otherwise, they feel like either what they're doing is not right, or that there are people that are going to cross their paths that are going to not want what they want, and it's going to make them harder. It's going to make it harder for them to get what they're looking for. That's where the statement, nobody wants to be alone and everybody wants to get married and everybody wants to have children. That's what those statements come from. Those are mob mentality statements. Those are absolutist statements where they're trying to make you wrong by how they word it. If you're not falling in line with what they're saying, listen, everybody wants this. And you're saying, well, no, not everybody, because I don't. So therefore, everybody can't be accurate. And they're saying, no, everybody does. You just haven't found this right thing yet. You just haven't. I mean, it's, I guess, a thought-terminating cliche to say that to you because they're trying to stop you from telling them something that makes them question their whole existence and how they've been doing things. Now, there's the rank mentality. And it's something that we do to ourselves for the most part, where we will see others as more valuable than us, or sometimes we will just feel less valuable than others based on some kind of caste system that we've been looking at, whether it's some kind of TV, celebrity, social media, anything like that makes us feel like we're less than because of something that someone else has presented to us. I believe everybody's who they are and everybody is valuable in their own way. Independent of each other, there are no people that are better than others. There are no relationships that are better than others. I wouldn't rank relationships that are romantic or friendships or community or coworkers or schoolmates as any different or than anyone else. I wouldn't say any of those relationships are better or worse. They are just different relationships, and they are part of the framework or the quilt that makes our life what it is. I've also talked to people who I thought had everything that were extremely insecure and worried about their value. And I've talked to people who've had absolutely nothing that have actually had much more insight and value as human beings, or understanding of their value and what humans are all about, and more wisdom. So it doesn't really matter. Always the only person you should ever compete with is yourself, with the exception of sporting events where you are on a sports team and you're told you need to compete to win. But beyond that, I don't think you should ever compete with other human beings. You should really compete more with yourself at different times, right? So you should compete with yourself yesterday. You should be a better person tomorrow than you are today. And you should compete with yourself on making yourself a better person and improving yourself as time goes on. Ad hominem. Ad hominem is something that I believe, if you're the type that's triggered emotionally, if somebody can say something to you and rattle you, it serves them to do that. They're going to try to do that. Now, gaslighting and passive-aggressive language falls under this umbrella as well. Now, in my circles, we tend to discuss theories, world events. We generally try to grab an understanding from each other of something that we're discussing. What caused it? How could it have been prevented? Now that it happened, what does it mean in the future? How can we prevent it? Or what will it look like going forward? That could be anything from bee pollen to the war in Ukraine or anything like that. We'll discuss it. Not all of us will agree, which is normal. In our case, usually it's more like somebody will bring up a topic, we'll discuss it, and then everybody will sort of give their opinion. And if something comes up where there's an opinion that we haven't thought of and it's worded in the right way, we'll try to discuss the topics at arm's length or not in a personal way. Of course, it depends. If somebody's really affected personally by the topic we're discussing, it can become emotional. And there's no reason why that wouldn't be okay. Now, if we're talking about, let's say, childlessness, and there's somebody in the conversation that can't have children, it's understandable that they would find it personal and it would be triggering emotionally for them to discuss it. We of course try to be sensitive to that, but we try to be objective about it. There are people who, well, if they're losing the argument, they'll see it. They'll see it as an argument to begin with, where really it's supposed to be a discussion. We'll try to break the topic down, understand the history, understand the details, get a biggest of a picture as we can of the topic, and then pull in as much original data as we can and cite sources. And then, of course, we all have opinions, which is kind of hard to avoid. Somebody might bring something to the fold or an angle that we weren't considering or we didn't really think about. And we try to incorporate that in information and continue to discuss. But again, there are some people who will look at this as an argument and they'll say something, and if you disagree, they'll come at you and start telling you that they think something's wrong with you. They'll insult you. That's what we call ad hominem. That's if you're having an argument with somebody or a discussion with somebody and it's politics, let's say, or religion or money or something like that. And it gets to be a really tough conversation and you cannot agree to disagree. It should be something that you can do, but some people cannot do that. Some people feel that there has to be a winner or loser. There has to be a binary result, meaning somebody's wrong and somebody's right, and that you can't possibly fathom the fact that two people could disagree about something and get along. There's somebody who will lob an insult at the other person. Now, for the most part out there in society, most people will respond to that by insulting back. What we try to do is see it as, oh, okay, this person's now insulting me as opposed to discussing the argument. So they're not disagreeing with the argument. Now they're disagreeing with me as a person, and they're making it personal to me. If somebody says something to you like that, if you can, try not to react and try to think about it and say, well, okay, why is this person insulting me? Of course, you can address it right away and say, okay, well, this is not really about me. This is about the topic, and the topic is blah, blah, blah. But think about it. When somebody does insult you, usually it means that they're losing ground and don't have any further information to provide. We see my group, we see the personal comes in as proof that somebody is lost the ability to argue the point. We see it as they're losing ground, and we don't want to take it as like, oh, we're better than you or whatever. But when somebody drops to that level, we kind of say, oh, okay, now we see where we're going with this. So in my opinion, you can react in one of two ways to this. I always say, well, I don't really care what they're saying about me. I'm a little more concerned with why they're saying what they're saying. So they could say you're ugly and whatever. Instead of responding, you could just say, well, that's interesting. Some people will knee-jerk in response and say, hey, well, you're ugly too, or swear at you or whatever. I think you lose ground when you do that, and I think that's why they send insults at you, to rattle you, right? Even though win or lose isn't really the goal. When you do see some ad hominem coming at you, you can kind of sort of take it as a victory, as opposed that this person isn't really looking to intelligently argue this point anymore. They're trying to throw you off balance emotionally. They're maybe trying to gaslight you by telling you that you're the one that is too emotional about this topic, and they can't continue to argue with you anymore because you're losing the battle emotionally. It's easier, I would think, so you can either get upset that they're calling you stupid and say, well, how dare they, and then fire back. Or the phrase of getting somebody or knocking somebody down to your level or getting down to someone else's level, as you get older, you're understanding it. And that means, do I want to just throw an insult at somebody and tell them that they're not good looking? Or do I want to actually get in and dig into the topic that's at hand and intelligently argue that topic? It's easier for me to knock you down emotionally and tell you that something's wrong with you than it is for me to level up and discuss the topic at hand with any kind of savoir-faire or any kind of intelligence. If I can't do that, I'm going to try to just knock you down by upsetting you and getting you all off your kilter to get you down to my level. That's what I think ad hominem really is. So what you can do is you can address the conversation and say, what about this conversation is something that makes you feel like you need to insult me? How does this connect with the topic that we're discussing? If you don't insult them back, if you don't lose your ground, and you just sort of say, well, that's interesting that you would insult me with this or tell me that you think this is what I am, but it's not really relevant to the conversation at hand. And, why is it that you felt that you had to use that insult? You had to call me that name or whatever it was that you did. It's interesting that you did that. Why do you think that it's something you felt like you needed to do? We hope you enjoyed part 1 of the logic of removing personal sensitivity from your interactions. We will be back next week with the rest of this episode. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Don't forget, check us out at www.lanaanddave.com. This has been Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Check us out on all podcast platforms. And don't forget to download, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating. Thank you. Hey, you just listened to Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share the podcast, leave us a comment or review, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'll see you soon.